Testing audio levels. I think we're doing well. 1 second. Sorry, Mark, for the noise, the fan noise yesterday. I've added an audio filter and it should sound better. Hopefully it sounds better. If it doesn't, please tell me, or if it sounds worse, definitely tell us and we'll sort it out. Cool. Good morning, everybody. It is November the 7th, and we're covering the AI news and updates of the day. We have two large stories today, and I'll also be answering some questions. The first one is Kimi K2 from Moonshot, and the second that we're going to be talking about is the OpenAI government backstop, and whether or not OpenAI are actually asking the US government to back them up as they move towards an IPO. Too big to fail, version 2.0. But first, let's look at Kimi K2. So Kimi K2, say that 1,000 times fast, is a new open source model from China, specifically from a company called Moonshot. They are based, are they Shanghai based or Shenzhen based? But they have a new model, and I think this is going to be another DeepSeek moment. So we had DeepSeek, would have been beginning of this year, I think it was, when people realized, oh, the Chinese are making quite good AI models, aren't they? This is quite good. And a lot of people started to use DeepSeek. DeepSeek was open source, which means the parameters, the weights and the biases were made readily available, so you could deploy it on your own machine if you had a really powerful machine, or you could host it on a cloud server and run it locally. There were a lot of security concerns at the time because there are still suspicions about using Chinese models. However, if you are running it locally, if you're running it on your own server, there is no connection between the copy of the open source model you are running and the origin, the Chinese government or the Chinese company that's made it. So it was a bit of a false flag. And I'm hoping this time with Kimi K2, we can kind of drop that, racism basically, and realize that the Chinese are putting out some really good models, and they're putting out open source models, which is something the West is not doing. The most recent kind of state-of-the-art model, not even state-of-the-art, but most recent open source would have been GPT OSS, which is 128 billion parameters, coming from ChatGPT creators at OpenAI, and prior to that we had the Llama models coming from Meta. But apart from that, the Western companies have pretty much given up on open source, whereas China are forging straight ahead. So now we have Kimi K2 thinking. Kimi, it's okay. First of all, it's free. You can just hop on and use it. It is also open source. There is an ability to upgrade. Let's see. So they have, oh gosh, I have chosen a very strange naming convention. So you can upgrade to Moderato, Allegretto, and Vivace, $200 a month, so $20 a month, $40 a month, and $200 a month, which gives you access to various different levels. What I do love, they've got this musical theming. What does Kimi actually mean? Is Kimi musical? I don't think so. Kimi, it means beautiful, precious, or righteous in Japanese, apparently. But they also have lots of music references. So I've seen they have something called OK Computer, which is one of their modes, and I think it's for building applications. So it's like a vibe coding tool. And I noticed also they're called Moonshot. I think there are references to Dark Side of the Moon from Pink Floyd. So they are music nerds for sure. It is free to use, so, and I recommend go and try and check it out. There's definitely an iOS app, and it's available in the browser. I do not know about Android. Sorry, I'm not sure. So let's have a look at the actual model itself. So the big thing here is that it is a 1 trillion parameter model. I talked about this briefly yesterday. The number of parameters you have in the model is basically the number of knobs and dials in your transformer layers that are set during the training phase. I don't want to go into too many details, but generally, and this is very broad strokes, the more parameters you have in your model, the better your model. Very general, and there'll be people in the comments being like, oh, actually, it's not that, it's about your tooling and your context. Yes, I understand, but generally, as a whole, the bigger the model, the better the model. And what we've got here is a state-of-the-art model, so SOTA, state-of-the-art, which is open source, and it has 1 trillion parameters. We think, and this is a rumor, an estimate, because we do not know for the actual commercial models, we think ChatGPT GPT-5 has about 1.5 trillion parameters, whereas this has 1 trillion parameters. However, it seems to be beating the state-of-the-art models. So this is the big news coming from China, is that it's not just as good as the models, state-of-the-art models, it is better. So it is beating GPT-5 and Sonnet 4.5 in humanities last exam. It got 44.9 compared to 41.7 for GPT-5. It is better at agentic search. It is better at coding than GPT-5, but not better than Sonnet 4.5. So Sonnet 4.5 is still the ruler. And same with all of the coding benchmarks. It tends to be not quite as good as Sonnet, but better than ChatGPT. And again, this is an open source model. Humanities last exam, though, is where it is absolutely killing it. We do need to always take these benchmarks into, we need to take benchmark results with a pinch of salt, because you can kind of train for the model. So it's really about how the usage is when we get our hands on it. When we as human beings start to use it, that's when we really know whether it's useful for our particular workflows. But on the benchmarks, at least, it is massacring the closed source models. So pretty exciting. And so what I'm looking at now is from Kimi, or from Moonshot specifically, but Artificial Analysis, who is a third party, have also rated it now as one of their top models. So they've put it at the top for agentic tool use. So it's looking pretty good. I highly recommend you go and try it, play around with it, see if it's good for you. If you are deploying local models, this is going to be the new contender. It is, as I said, the new DeepSeek. It's a model from China, which is open source, which is absolutely killing it. This is a huge problem for OpenAI, for Anthropic, for Google, for everyone else, because they are raising huge amounts of cash, especially OpenAI, who are aiming at a $1 trillion IPO, which we'll talk about in a moment. They're raising a huge amount of cash, and they are promising revenues and profits in the future. When Chinese models like this come along and open source their models and say, here you go, use it, go ahead, deploy it on your own servers, you don't need to pay us for that, here's the model, go nuts. That is a massive threat to the closed sourced businesses, because if this is better than ChatGPT, why would I be using ChatGPT's API? Why would I be paying ChatGPT when I can use a Chinese open source model? Huge threat to the Western companies, and I think this is part of the strategic play from China, because the government backs up these models. The government subsidizes energy costs, training costs, etc., helps them to push forward these models, because it does undermine Western models like OpenAI. And increasingly, OpenAI is the center of the American economy, and honestly, wider than that, the kind of Western economy. OpenAI is now sitting at the center, surrounded by all the other tech companies. And if OpenAI does not deliver, or if its mission is compromised by open source models like Kimi, that's going to be a hell of a strategic blow for the Chinese government and China as a whole to hit against America. So it is hotting up, and that's going to be related to the next story that we're going to be talking about, which is government backstops for OpenAI, i.e. if OpenAI gets in trouble and needs financial help, the US government will bail them out. We've been here before with Too Big to Fail, just less than 20 years ago, and it looks like we might be moving towards that one more time. I'm going to hop over to some questions though. That's interesting. I now have an AI inside of my TikTok live. I'm being told, oh, very interesting. I'm being told I can get AI summaries of my live. That's cool. Let's have a look and see what's going on. Good morning, everybody on TikTok. Are you aware of any stats on AI UCG content being successful and converting? Not really, because all of the AI UCG stats I've seen have come from AI UCG companies. So so they, so I haven't seen anything third party. If you are thinking about doing it yourself, I would just say give it a shot. Like with anything in business, try it out, allocate a small amount of budget. I don't know, probably a couple £100, couple $100. Run some AI UCG and see if it works for you. So UCG for people who are, let's see, who have no idea what we're talking about. UCG is, let me pull up Creatify, for example. It's the ability to create basically AI influencers talking about your product, so they can just trying to find something. There we go. They can hold up a copy of your product and they can talk about how Altoid breath mints make your breath minty fresh. Previously, UCG has been done through people, influencers, micro influencers, people who have, you know, a couple of thousand, maybe 100,000 followers on social media. They will be paid an amount of money to hold up your product and say, I love this product, it's made my life better. There are AI companies now who provide AI avatars who do this for you. I get quite a lot of them reaching out to me and saying, hey, will you promote our UCG AI? I always say no to them because I personally, this is entirely a personal thing, I find it a bit gross. Having an AI influencer say, hey, these mints are great, and using that to sell these mints, to me personally, doesn't sit right, because that is not a person. They haven't actually had that experience, and we're just churning out content using AI. So I don't personally think it's a valuable use of AI. However, I can see why people do it, and I'm sure it's a solid marketing channel. So in terms of your question, I have not seen any stats on it being successful in converting. I imagine it does so in the same way that UCG does, and the AI versions are becoming fairly indistinguishable from the humans, and it's a lot cheaper than hiring an influencer. So for example, when I'm asked to do a video, I don't actually do videos, but my rate is around, I've done one or two, is around £1,000 to £2,000 to do a video talking about a product. And I know people who charge a lot more than that, a huge amount more than that. So using AI to come up with a UCG ad instead is very appealing because it doesn't cost thousands, it costs pennies. But no, I haven't seen any stats on it, so I'd say give it a shot if you're happy to try it. Are the AI models proven to perform better? Doesn't China inflate numbers? So that's why we have artificial analysis. So artificial analysis and also Hugging Face have, not Hugging Face, LM Arena have, there we go, have benchmarks as well. So there are third-party benchmarks. Let's see if Kimi shows up. I don't think it is yet on LM Arena. Oh, okay, we've got a Kimi. I'm not sure if this is the new version. The newest one is Kimi K2 Thinking, which I'm not sure if we have yet. Just checking for you. So we do have third-party analysis for this reason, so we can check. And this is the same for the Western models as well. So OpenAI and Anthropic, they'll all, and Grok in particular, they'll all put forward that this is the best model, this is state of the art. Every time they release a new model, Grok in particular is a bit slippery with this. They'll always say, oh, we are the best model at coding, we're the best model at humanities last exam, the best model at these different software engineering benchmarks, and then people will use it and be like, no you're not, what are you talking about? So that's always going to be an issue, whether it's a Chinese model or whether it's a Western model, which is why we use things like artificial analysis.ai, lmarina.ai, and other third-party sites who kind of check them. That said, the ultimate check of whether an AI model is good is going to be subjective. It's going to depend on what you personally use it for, what your workflows are, whether it can perform for your particular task. That's why I recommend trying at least messing around with most of the new major releases. And Kimi K2 looks to be a pretty exciting new release. But yes, we can't trust any company really, because everyone will make it up. And I do wonder if this is why Gemini 3 hasn't been released yet. I wonder if part of it is, oh, it's not state of the art, it's not SOTA, so we will be killed if we release it. It will just it will be ignored. I don't know what they can do about that now without retraining it, but that could be a reason why we're not seeing it. Because we think the new Gemini 3 model is a 1 trillion. Oh, thank you for the cap. Hey, Victor, how are you doing? We think the new Gemini 3 model is a 1 trillion parameter model. Sorry, 1.2 trillion parameter model, because there was a leak from Bloomberg, which was reported because Siri from Apple are going to be incorporating Gemini into the new version in March 2026. So Bloomberg were covering the new Siri AI coming in March, and as part of that, they'd been told about the Gemini model that has been put inside it, and that it had 1.2 trillion parameters. Generally, the state-of-the-art models and the closed source models like ChatGPT, Gemini, Grok, etc., they do not say how many parameters they have. Generally, only the open source models will tell you, because you're going to be running on your own machine, and you kind of need to know. Plus, you can count them because it's open source. Although you're not going to be counting 1 trillion by hand, your computer will. But the fact that Gemini is 1.2 trillion parameters, and then we have things like Kimi K2 thinking that just came out with 1 trillion parameters, makes me wonder whether Google's new model, Google 3, is not going to be state of the art by the time it releases, because it might have already been overtaken. Fingers crossed though, I'm hoping it's going to be good, because I do like the Gemini models. Right, so the other big piece of news, now this is a complex one, so bear with me as we work through it. So yesterday, Sam Altman put out I can't even call it a tweet, he put out a small essay on X, starting with, I would like to clarify a few things. Generally, Sam Altman's tweets are pretty short, pretty pithy. It's normally him and Elon Musk arguing about something. He also doesn't use punctuation, he doesn't use capitalization, but this is a proper message he's put out. He's used capital letters, so we know that he's being serious. They went into damage control mode yesterday. So let's have a look at why, because this is connected, I think, to what we were just talking about with the threat of China and Chinese models, and also with the fact that at the beginning of the week, OpenAI have finally become a for-profit, and they are eyeing an IPO, initial public offering, maybe next year, maybe 2027. So there's a lot going on, and all of our economies and all of the money that we make is tied to this, because there's so much money being thrown into artificial intelligence. So a few days ago, the CFO, Sarah Fryer, she on Wednesday said that the US government should backstop the company's aggressive investments. And I'm going to pull up the actual reporting if I can. I've lost all my tabs. Here it is. So OpenAI seeks government backing to boost AI investments. This was on Wednesday. ChatGPT creator OpenAI, the world's largest private company, of course, yes it is asking the US government to provide loan guarantees for its massive infrastructure and expansion that will eventually cost more than $1 trillion. Speaking at a Wall Street Journal business conference, so surrounded by reporters, so she should have been a bit more careful here, OpenAI CFO Sarah Fryer explained that government backing could help attract the enormous investment needed for AI computing and infrastructure. So by the government saying, hey, we're going to back up this investment, if it goes wrong, we'll be there to swoop in, that will alleviate the fears of private investment and allow them to reach the cash that they need. So it's not necessarily, hey, we want the US government to give us the money. It is, we want you to put in some kind of guarantees, some kind of support if things go wrong. So could help attract enormous investment needed for AI computing and infrastructure, $1 trillion, given the uncertain lifespan of AI data centers. Oh God, she admitted that. Yikes. This is where we're looking for an ecosystem of banks, private equity, maybe even governmental, Fryer said. Federal loan guarantees would, I quote, really drop the cost of financing, she explained, enabling OpenAI and its investors to borrow more money at lower rates to meet the company's ambitious targets. The proposal, unusual for a Silicon Valley giant, would theoretically reduce OpenAI's borrowing costs since the government would absorb losses if the company defaulted. So this is what happened in 2007 with the government stepping in and bailing out banks. Remember, too big to fail? They did fail. And even with the government throwing a lot of money in to try and rescue banks and to keep the financial system propped up, 2007 was one of the biggest crashes we've had in recent memory. We keep having these once-in-a-lifetime financial disasters, but we've had multiple once-in-a-lifetime disasters within our lifetimes, and we may be moving towards another one. So she says, such guarantees would dramatically expand OpenAI's potential lender pool as many banks and financial institutions face strict limits on high-risk lending. OpenAI's request for government support comes amid a massive spending spree on computing infrastructure, data centers, GPUs, raising questions about how the company will recoup these investments. So earlier in the week, Sam Altman was directly asked this. He was like, hey, you were trying to raise $1.3 trillion, or $1 trillion, and going for a valuation, an IPO valuation of $1 trillion, but your revenues are around 10 billion. So how are you going to make up that cash? How are you going to ever turn a profit? And Sam Altman had a bit of an aggressive emotional reaction to that and basically said, I wish people would stop asking me about revenues. I'm looking forward to when it goes public, so I can watch people short the stock and lose their money. Like he went full emotional again about it. So it is a question that's being asked, like, how on earth are you ever going to make this amount of money? It's an impossible amount of money to recoup and to make a profit on. So by some estimates, OpenAI has committed to approximately $1 trillion in infrastructure deals this year alone. This is with Oracle, Nvidia, AWS, including a $300 billion partnership with Oracle and a $500 billion Stargate project with Oracle and SoftBank. This is money they do not have, remember? While the company expects revenues in the tens of billions this year, impressive for a startup, yep, that figure falls far short of covering the computing costs required to power OpenAI's advanced chatbots. So they are losing money. They are not making money. During the interview, Fryer dismissed reports that OpenAI plans to go public soon. IPO is not on the cards right now, she said, emphasizing that the company's current priority is growth. So yeah, the rumor is they are heading towards an IPO. And they need to raise a huge amount of money for that. An IPO allows them to raise that money because it gives a return on investment incentive to private investors. What we're talking about here, though, is the government of the US government propping up these deals and basically not allowing OpenAI to fail. This is upsetting if you are an American taxpayer because that is ultimately your money that is going to prop up OpenAI. So this report from the Associated Press, based on the CFO's statements at a Wall Street Journal business conference, surrounded by journalists again. So this is why they've gone into full damage control mode. So she definitely said we're looking for a backstop, and governmental support would be useful. So why is this so controversial? Fryer's initial comment took heat because it seemed to imply that the US government, thus taxpayers, should be on the hook if OpenAI can't figure out how to pay for the chips it has said it will buy, so the $1 trillion. And that didn't sit well with many people, given that OpenAI is a private company valued at $500 billion, for which taxpayers wouldn't be seeing any direct benefit if it succeeds. Yeah, so it is definitely a problem. So Sam Altman put together a statement. I'm going to put this in the newsletter because it's too long to read in full. But basically, he said, I'd like to clarify a few things. The obvious one, we do not have or want government guarantees for OpenAI data centers. So he's fully going against what his CFO has said. We believe that government should not pick winners and losers, and that taxpayers should not bail out companies that make bad business decisions or otherwise lose in the market. So he's saying capitalism and competition is a good thing. We do not want the government to be supporting us. If one company fails, other companies will do good work. He then goes on to say, what we do think might make sense is governments building and owning their own AI infrastructure, but then the upside of that should flow to the government as well. So potentially having the government invest in the infrastructure, which we're actually seeing in America with a government investment in Intel, which is very rare for a government to do. Sorry. It is rare for the US government to do. In China, it's the norm. So the government will have a portion called the golden shares in all of the tech companies in China. So they are connected. But in America, no. We can imagine a world where governments decide to offtake a lot of computing power and get the decision how to use it. And it might make sense to provide lower cost of capital to do so. So that would be the government taking part in the technology and investing in it. Building a strategic national reserve of computing power makes a lot of sense. This is a priority that Trump put forward in the AI action plan, which is basically a strategic national reserve against China. And China are doing the same thing. China has made, several years ago, they made AI a strategic concern. But this should be for government benefit, not the benefit of private companies, etc. So I'm going to put this in the newsletter so that you can read through it in full, because it is very lengthy. I think what is interesting here is, one, the CFO has made this statement, and then Sam Altman has had to come forward and say, no, ignore that. The CFO is also in full retraction mode on LinkedIn, of all places, where she posted. See if I can pull it up. Nope, that's gone. There we go. I want to clarify my comments earlier today. OpenAI is not seeking a government backstop for our infrastructure commitments. I used the word backstop and it muddied the point. So she's basically saying I messed up. As the full clip of my answer shows, I was making the point that American strength in technology will come from building real-world industrial capacity, which requires the private sector and the government playing their part. As I said, the US government has been incredibly forward-leaning and has really understood that AI is the national strategic asset. So basically went back on it, but then left the door open for for government investment. So not a government backstop, I think used the wrong word basically, but government investment and owning part of that strategic reserve. So it's an interesting topic, and I think mainly because it shows how big these companies are getting and how intertwined with our financial markets these companies are. And it raises the question of, okay, well, what if you can't make this money back? What are we investing in? And this brings us to questions of a bubble and a potential correction. And whether or not it's going to be a crash like in 2001, the dot-com boom and bust, or it's going to be more like 2007 with the mortgage crisis, the collateralized debt obligations, and then the government stepping in to try to stop it all collapsing. We will see. Or maybe we'll hit AGI and we'll enter a new utopian world where AI will change the fabric of society and the economy as a whole, and the winners, companies like OpenAI, who invested heavily, will reap the rewards of that. We don't know, and it's hard to predict the future. I'm going to hop over to some questions. What do you think is the best for free vibe coding? That is now an easy answer. It wasn't a week ago. Google AI Studio. So go to aistudio.google.com, and then on the left hand side they have a button which says build. Build takes you into, I don't even know what they're calling it. I'm not even sure what they're calling it. It takes you into their vibe coding tool. So Google AI Studio is a bit of a confusing UI and interface and user experience, because you can build at different levels. You can vibe code stuff, or you can build something a bit more robust. So in the build specific area, that's a vibe coding tool, and it's pretty good. You can obviously only build with their models. So we've got Gemini 5 Pro and Flash. It has access to Nano Banana, which is really good because it's probably the best image model right now. And then you can even use your voice, like on Lovable, to talk to it. So that's really cool. I would say this is a good way to test out your ideas, but then you might want to move over to something like Cursor, which is, I think it has a free version. Yeah, it has, the hobby version is free. No, it's not. Okay, 1 week pro trial. Okay, no. Yeah, so the hobby version is free, and then it's $20 a month from there. So you might start in AI Studio, the build mode, and then move it over to Cursor if you want to. However, with AI Studio or with any vibe coding app, as you start, if you deploy and people start to use your AI, then your usage is going to go up and up and up and up. Your API usage, you'll have to pay for the API. Thankfully, the API is pretty cheap. Gemini is, it's, every time somebody sends a message, it's going to be $0.0001 or something like that. But be aware there will be a cost later down the line for that kind of stuff. Not seeing any more questions. Scrolling down. Hey Aurora, good morning. I think that's it in terms of questions. Yep, not seeing any. Awesome. What time is it? So we did two main stories today. The release of Kimi K2. As I said, go and try it out. It's free to test out, play around with. It's got an app, and it's available as a web app as well. If you just Google Kimi K2, it should pop up. And then the second story we talked about, which is a bit of a complicated one, so I'll give you all the resources in the newsletter, is the potential government backstop for OpenAI. So a governmental promise from the US government saying, hey, if this falls through, we'll be there to bail you out, which has caused a lot of upset, and rightly so, I think. And then a retraction from the CFO of the company, who made the mistake of using the word backstop, followed by a very long statement from Sam Altman, which we don't normally see. So they're in full damage control mode. And I wonder if their CFO is going to be quietly dismissed over the next few weeks or few months. We'll see. Which would be a shame, by messing up and using the word backstop to lose your job, but it's caused a lot of chaos, an awful lot of chaos. So as always, all of this is available on YouTube. We edit everything, we make it a bit easier for you to get into, and it will be in the newsletter. The next newsletter will be on Monday. Sorry, the next newsletter will be on Monday, but there's another newsletter coming out tomorrow, Saturday, where I'm actually going to walk you through how to use Claude Code web version, which just came out. Everybody who has a Claude subscription has been given credits for Claude Code. So if you're on the $20 a month Claude subscription, you've been given 250 free credits for using Claude Code on the web. If you're on the $200 a month, you've been given $1,000 of credits. I currently have $1,000 of credits, and I only have until the 18th to use them all, which is a bit of a pressure. I don't want to lose the money. It's my Scottishness. So I'm going to be writing a guide, which will be in tomorrow's newsletter. Again, the newsletter is totally free, link in the bio, and that will be showing you how you can get started using Claude Code, what it is, what you can use it for, the starting steps, etc. So make sure you grab the newsletter tomorrow. And I will be back on Monday with more AI news and updates, keeping us appraised of what is happening in the very, very fast moving world of artificial intelligence. So thank you so much for everyone joining in the live, and I will see you next week.